In the early part of the Hunted spoiler season, we saw many of the new expansion slot cards, and Cry of Bellona, the new card for Boltyn, is really awesome. And it's not just because it's functionally good in a Radyn build, helping to supplement what was honestly missing a little bit versus the previous Saber builds, but also because it potentially hints at the future of Flesh and Blood as it applies to silver bullets.
A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando.
Hey there, my Flesh and Blood friends. Welcome back to the channel, and happy Flesh and Blood Friday. I hope your holiday season has gone well. It's pretty much wrapped up at this point. It's time to kind of return to normal life. But we do have spoiler season, or I should say the rest of spoiler season for the Hunted right around the corner. Now, today I want to have a bit of a larger discussion, but centered around the brand new Light Warrior card, Cry of Bellona, which is, yes, coming in the Hunted as an expansion slot. So first, what I want to do is talk a bit about silver bullets in Flesh and Blood, and then we'll talk about this card and why not only is the card itself super cool and super good, but also why I love what this card is and what it potentially means for the future. So first, let's baseline on silver bullets, because admittedly, I grant that it's a bit of a sliding scale in terms of definition, right? Some silver bullets are more like scalpels, others more like samurai swords, and then some, yes, are more like a sledgehammer. Now, in the truest sense, what we refer to as a silver bullet in TCGs is really a specific solution card. The card can be incredibly powerful against a certain type of card or archetype, but is often useless or extremely inefficient otherwise. Classic silver bullets in this game are something like Warmonger's Diplomacy or Poison the Well, and to a lesser extent, Gravekeeping. Poison the Well, if you are up against a deck that is not gaining life, really does nothing for you whatsoever. Warmonger's Diplomacy obviously is a blue that blocks 3, so that's very good and very useful, but it's really only taking out specific archetypes, but when you run up against that type of archetype, it can absolutely demolish their next turn. And then Gravekeeping really falls into more of the less efficient type category. It's always just a 1 for 5, which is functionally good, but there are so many better options you could play if you don't run up against a deck that is trying to do something with either bouncing or taking advantage of cards that are in their graveyard. So as we move down the scale, we fall into what I call the sort of silver bullets category, and there are quite a few of these in Flesh and Blood. And what I'm referring to here are cards like the Weakest Link, which is clearly meant to go after like the Mystic Heroes and Chi cards, or a Race Face, which can absolutely demolish elemental heroes, or even something like Balance of Justice out of heavy hitters, which was meant to capitalize on like the Brutes, for example, that would do a lot of card draw and it would actually give you a bonus there. Now, the reason that these are sort of silver bullets, and I want to be very clear, they are considered silver bullets within like the grand scheme of TCGs, but they're not completely worthless otherwise, right? If you compare it to Poison the Well, which is just a dead card in your deck if you're not playing against life gain, something like Weakest Link or Race Face, they're still a 2/6, right? So they really fall more on like the Gravekeeping type end. But you also, you might catch something, you might get a little benefit out of it. And Balance of Justice, right? If you're going to play it over Crown, you'd like to have the card draw. But again, it's not going to kill you if you're not able to get the benefit out of it. It's not like basically running a no-head slot. Then finally, we have, I just want to be clear in terms of talking about silver bullets, the reason I have FFS on here is Finals Fighting Spirit is representing poppers. Running subset of poppers is not really a silver bullet in the truest sense. And likewise, Oasis Respite, generally you're going to run this for like your Wizard matchups or your Kano matchups, but it's still a very defensible card, right? So in terms of like the grand scale, these are not very limiting in terms of being useless, inefficient perhaps, and maybe you're not going to side them in, but they're not a completely dead card in a tournament. Like you may use them in other scenarios like Fatigue Match or something like that, as opposed to just the specific use that you bought it in for, like Oasis Respite. Not uncommon to throw that in a Fatigue Match for just extra blocking or whatever it may be. And it's not dead if it's not only against Wizard. And likewise, I have Null Rune Hood up there representing AB, which is, again, not in the truest sense. I don't consider it to be, in the truest sense, a silver bullet. That then leads us to Cry of Bellona. So a light warrior attack reaction blocks 3 and is yellow for 0. Target Radyn gets +2 this turn. But as an instant, you can discard this, banish X cards from your soul, and the next time target weapon deals X or less damage to you this turn, deal that much damage to its controller, and that damage can't be prevented. So the obvious best use of this in today's current meta is something like Enigma, right? Remember that she turns those wards into weapons, attacks with them. So you can do the thing, and then it becomes unblockable. Well, you just get a nice little board wipe there, don't you? Right? So that's obviously the functional use of the instant. But this card also is just really functionally good with the Lumina, like what Boltyn's trying to do, which is like the Lumina go wide turn. Now, you may have noticed on the thumbnail, I kind of made a joke, future-proofing for 2030. And that's because this says target Radyn. It doesn't say Radyn Duskbane. So that's the joke, is like, hey, we're future-proofing that this will always work with a Radyn card. Well, Boltyn probably won't tell until like 2030 is where the joke's coming from. Hopefully you picked up on that. Either way, just having a little bit of fun on that one. But I do think I think it's a great point. Like, I really enjoy what this card's doing on multiple levels. This card is functionally good. Like, you would probably play this card regardless, but it also gives you that silver bullet thing, right? But if you're not playing against Enigma, or maybe I suppose it could be like a reckless swing, right? Like a yellow reckless swing to from a certain point of view. If you're not playing against a deck that's not bringing weapons or isn't doing the Enigma thing to you, it's not a dead card, right? It's functionally like a really good card. So the reason this becomes such a big deal in the discussion about silver bullets is if we compare that to something like we've had previously, which was Chorus of Ironsong. Now, granted, that's a Dorinthea spec. I grant you that, right? But in this case, it was really, 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 really inefficient if you weren't doing it for the damage prevention, right? And it did have the Unity thing, which was pretty good. But if you take Chorus of Ironsong, which by and large didn't really see play period until Enigma, and that was really just still trying to like squeak out a really bad matchup, you now compare that to Cry of Bellona, incredibly functionally useful card within your main archetype that also gives you a bailout. So the reason that this is part of the discussion and the interest for me is I've never personally been a huge fan of silver bullet culture. And what I mean by that is like Poison the Well, for example. There were a lot of folks, like when Enigma was doing her thing with CYB, right? When CYB was doing its thing, it was, well, CYB is not a problem because there are answers. And to expect everyone to go back and put in something like a Poison the Well into their deck specifically to deal with that specific thing that was good in the meta, I've never been a huge fan of that type of design concept, right? So whether you agree, whether you don't agree, we can all disagree and commit that being forced to play certain cards to counter other certain cards does create a bit of or creates the potential for a very polarizing matchup type meta, right? Where either you have it or you don't, and if they do, it's bad. If you don't, it's bad, right? Either way. So that's why I've personally never been a fan of that type of thing, and that's why I really love the potential of Cry of Bellona in terms of what it could mean for the future of bringing out other type of very specific cards that also give you kind of that bailout help that you need, right? So what if you could, have counters in, maybe not like death knell counters. What if you could have functional support for a good portion of the meta in your deck that wasn't dead if you weren't playing against that specific hero? And that is what this card does. And I believe that this is a signpost for the future on seeing many more of those. And I think it can only be a good thing for Flesh and Blood. I cannot wait to see what other cards can do. Probably not so much in this set, but in the set after, I highly suspect we're going to start seeing more of these. So anyway, let me know if you agree. Do you think we're going to see more of this type of stuff, or is this a one-off that's just super amazing for Boltyn? I tend to think not, but let me know below what you're thinking, and also why this card's so freaking awesome, being able to go +2 multiple times with Lumina. Oh, so hot. Boltyn fans out there, let me know. Thanks for watching, and go Commando.